This week on the Analog Circle podcast, we get a blowout of PlayStation VR2 news. They gave us a lot to discuss this week. We're getting rumors that Bethesda's Starfield will release this year. Very interesting, not going to want to miss that. Gamescom is coming back as a live event. Who saw that coming? And Microsoft is having a March event. All of these stories can be found here and much more in episode 169 of the Analog Circle podcast. I am your host, Kiaun Mitchell, and I want to say, as always, welcome. Come on in, gather around, sit down, relax, and get comfortable, because we're going to have a good time today. And thank you guys so much for all of your support. Now, with that being said, if you want to be a part of the upcoming listener feedback episode, which will be recorded on Wednesday, you can do that two different ways. Either you can call in at 443-216-9934 and let your voice be heard, or you can email the show. And the email address is theanalogcirclepodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you want to listen to some previously recorded episodes of the podcast, simply go over to Google, type it into Google, the Analog Circle Podcast. It'll take you to where you need to be, and y'all know the rest, and enjoy yourself. Now, I have to say, this week, didn't get a chance to really get into much. So, unfortunately, nothing came across my radar. I still have to finish Ghouls and Ghosts Remastered. That game is still hard as heck. I jumped into it for a couple of minutes, didn't get too far. So, that's about all I have to report. But with that being said, let's go ahead, guys, and let's jump into what we all come here for, and that is the gaming news that went down. Now, I want to start it off this week with I believe I got this from Windows Central, that Microsoft is having an event which will take place on March 26th, and it's the ID at Xbox Showcase. Now, they are going to be revealing over 100 games at this event. And let me read the quote for you guys here. It says, quote, "We're featuring tons of independent titles, including brand new game announcements from developers and publishers such as Drinkbox, Curve Digital, Devolver Digital, Dear Villagers, and others. During the showcase, we'll debut new trailers and gameplay for more than 25 games, including Stalker 2. That's interesting. Second Extinction. I'm kind of looking forward to that one. And The Ascent. I'm definitely looking forward to that. The Ascent is one that has that cyberpunk kind of look to it. But let me continue on. They say The Wild at Heart, Void Train, and XO1, and many more. We'll also be making announcements about independent titles coming to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass. Community favorite Twitch streamers will host the showcase and conduct interviews with developers, take fan questions, and maybe even drop some game codes. Now, the event will stream from Twitch on, on Twitch Gaming, and it will start at 9 a.m. PDT, and I guess that's around, I don't even know what time that is for us. That's probably around I guess on the East Coast, maybe around like 12 o'clock noon. So just be on the lookout for that. I'm actually really interested to see what games they show off. Like I said, The Ascent is definitely a game that I'm looking forward to. It was supposed to have been out, I thought, last year. Then it got bumped into this year. They're talking about showing off Second Extinction with the dinosaurs, the first-person shooter. FPS. Yeah, I'm really excited about that as well. Kind of reminds me of like a Turok 2021 edition probably. And what I'm really hoping for, which I think they would have announced it here in this quote, but I'm hoping that we hear something, an inkling, a piece of news about the DLC for Cuphead, the delicious, what was it called? The Delicious Course. I'm hoping that those guys over at MDHR are at this event and we get something, because we heard that the game, well, the DLC for the game is supposed to release this year. Here we are in March, pretty much starting to get towards the end of March, and we've heard nothing. So hopefully, once again, on March 26th, we get some more news about that, as well as some other games that we may not have heard of that just might catch our attention. So I'm absolutely looking forward to this one. Let's go ahead and let's get into the next story. So let's talk about some PlayStation news. Now, another PS4 feature is getting cut starting next month. The communities feature is getting shut down. Now, this will include screenshot sharing, parties, message boards, and more. Now, I guess this shouldn't be shocking considering Sony killed the community app last year. So I guess this is par the course. So, I mean, I still don't think this indicates, because I've heard, just on the internet, different stories that I've read, because you guys know I have no insiders, absolutely zero. Google and the internet is my only insiders. So when I say this, it's just looking at other stories that were going around talking about this, saying that, does this mean that Sony is about to stop supporting the PlayStation 4 in the very, very close future and start really concentrating all of their assets and their resources onto the PS5? And a lot of people ran with this and thought that this was a clear indication of that. I don't think so. I think Jim Ryan said that they're going to be sticking with the PlayStation 4 for quite a few more years during this current generation. And we know that Sony never completely drops off their support for their previous generation console until at least 2, sometimes 3 years down the line. It takes a while for them to absolutely just cut complete ties with that last generation of hardware. So I think this is just simply something that they probably looked at the analytics on, didn't see that it was doing too well, wasn't moving the meter too much, and they decided to just cut the feature. I don't think it's any more than that. But we shall see. We will see how long Jim Ryan and friends keep on supporting the PlayStation 4 during the PlayStation 5's life cycle. But anyway, let's go ahead and let's move into the next story. So this next story is a bit of a lighter story, but lately we haven't really been hearing much about Quantic Dreams since the 2018 game that they released called Detroit Become Human, which was, man, that game, good grief, you want to talk about one of the more prettier games of last generation. That thing shined. I mean, that game was beautiful to look at. But anyway, I digress. But it appears that the company is actually not only publishing, but also helping to bring that classic cinematic flair that they're known for in a partnership with fellow French studio Parallel Studios, who are working on a story-driven adventure with, quote, atmospheric and poetic cinematography, end of quote. And Quantum Dream CEO Guillaume, man, I'ma mess this last name up on this brother, something severe. It's spelled Doffonda, Fondamir. I know I messed it up, but pardon me. He said the studio was, quote, seduced by the concept, end of quote. So as it stands, the project hasn't been officially announced, but hopefully in the near future we'll get some info. And we also don't know, because they didn't mention this either, because once again, it hasn't been announced, but we don't know what platforms this game will be released on. By the way, I got this story from Push Square. So it's great to hear that these guys, man, they have really stepped up. They're also publishing the game as well as helping them to build up that cinematic flair. I mean, because, man, let me tell you something, man. Quantic Dreams, these guys have been so far ahead of the curve. I remember going all the way back to the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 era of seeing a game of theirs called, well, it was called Fahrenheit in other countries, but it was called something Prophecy, Indigo Prophecy here in the States. And it was the first time, it was the scene where you were in the stall, the bathroom stall, and you had to kill the guy, and all of a sudden they had this other camera showing the police that were rushing into the bathroom to try to catch you in the act, trying to arrest you. It really built a sense of tension in the game that I had never felt before. It was something so different and so out of the box. And those guys from that game to Heavy Rain to Detroit Become Human, and I know I'm skipping one of their games, but I mean, just their track record of having that cinematic flair to their games, that cinematography, that gaming cinematography that they bring to the industry is absolutely amazing. And the choices that you make really changing the story beats. It was just awesome, man. Heavy Rain is still one of my favorite games from those guys. And just the fact that, once again, they're working with Parallel Studios on this project that they're working on, I'm really excited to see what happens with this collaboration between these two companies. So we will see. Maybe we'll hear something later on this year. Maybe not. I'm leaning towards probably not, but we can definitely keep our hand on the pulse. Let's go ahead and let's talk about game event news, because this is pretty positive and, in my opinion, unexpected. But Gamescom has announced it's coming back this year to host a physical event in Cologne, Germany between August 25th and August 29th. Now, here is the direct quote from Managing Director Felix Falk, who says, and I quote, "In late summer, we are striving to make an on-site Gamescom event possible for the gaming fans again. We will hereby be placing a focus on the super fans and the on-site testing of the latest games this year." End of quote. Now, they also said the event will have an improved web presence, which will act as a central online meeting point for gaming fans around the world. And tickets will go on sale in May. They didn't give a specific day, but in May, get ready to hit the button on the tickets, because they are warning people that tickets that will be available will be reduced, and it'll be significantly, reduced when compared to previous years. So if you're trying to go to this event, you will want to jump on it as soon as possible. And they did mention, and I find this interesting as well, is that they will have a digital queue management system that would help attendees test new games live. So does that mean that possibly these guys won't have to go to these stations? Because I remember hearing, I've never gone to E3, definitely wanted to over the years, but I've heard that waiting in these lines, they take so long. It's hours upon hours upon hours that you could be waiting to play a 15 or 20-minute demo. That sounds like a pretty bad rap, man, to me. I don't think that the time waited versus how much fun you're going to get out of it. I don't know. I don't know if that's a fair trade, but I guess it depends on what game it is and how anticipated you are, how much anticipation, I should say, you have for this game. I guess that'll prove whether or not, it was worth your time or not. But them talking about these digital cues, making it so these attendees would be able to test new games live. Digital, when they say digital, does that mean that these guys will be hooked up to some kind of devices that while they're on site, once it's their digital turn or their next digitally in line, that they'll be able to boot up the game and play it on a separate device, depending on what it is. I don't know how it's going to work exactly, but I think that's very interesting because you guys know what I want ultimately to happen with these events. I want it to be a situation where us, the gamers that can't make the trip to Cologne, Germany, which flight alone is probably going to be like $1,100 just for the flight, to get over there, not including your food, the hotel that you're going to have to stay in, just the amenities that you're going to need, in order to, have a good time over there. The money would be astronomical that you would spend. But for me, I want it to be a situation where, like I said, the digital pass, as it were, a digital Gamescom pass, you pay for it and you get access to these games and, these demos digitally off of your digital ticket that you bought to Gamescom. I was just hoping that maybe because of that, we might be getting closer and closer to that being a reality. We'll, of course, have to see. And I'm probably blowing it way out of proportion, but it's a TBD, to be determined. Maybe one day it'll be a situation where that will be the case. But nonetheless, this is fantastic news. I'm glad that Gamescom is making a comeback, and it's physical. It's a physical event, which hopefully, and I know it's a different country, it's not the US, but hopefully, just as a whole, this means that we're getting closer and closer. We're creeping ever so slowly back to these kind of events becoming a reality in the very, very near future. Let's go ahead and let's get into the next story. Now this is a rumor. You guys know what I say when it comes to the rumors. Take these words with a mustard seed of truth. So, Jeff Grubb. Oh man, this guy has a great track record. He is back in the news again though, while guest starring on Dealer Gaming's podcast. I actually know that guy. I've heard the podcast quite a few times. Shout out to them. The Dealers Gaming podcast. The VentureBeat affiliate claimed to know a few new details about the game. Now, one being that the developer will be unveiling the game at this year's E3, and that Bethesda will try to target the marketing of the game similarly to how they did with Fallout 4 by showing it off and releasing it in a few short months later on down the line. And because of that, Grubb believes the game will release in the late part of this year. Now, before, we start saying, oh man, this is excellent news, he did say that COVID, and we all know this, COVID is a real thing, and it could throw a wrench in their plans. So, nothing, once again, it's not confirmed, but how awesome would it be? All of us, I think it's fair to say that all of us are looking forward to seeing what this Todd Howard game is about. Starfield. We all want to get a glimpse of it, understand what the premise of the game is. How is it looking? What is the story? Who are the characters? I think we are all on the edge of our seats to see this game. And if we could see it at this year's E3, that would be a W. As far as I'm concerned, that would be a win. And we know how Bethesda does their game demos. When they had their shows at E3, they would always deep dive into what they had going on, and it was always a nice lengthy demo. You would get a good 15, 20 minutes just to really, kind of soak you into the world. And if Starfield is anything like Fallout or like Elder Scrolls, just that DNA that we know exists over there, with Bethesda and Todd Howard, this could be incredible. And that's another thing. I'm not saying we forget. I can't speak for you guys, but I'm sure some people may forget that Bethesda, they had their own events and Microsoft owns them now. So essentially it's a whole E3 event, not necessarily taken off the table, but it's going to be in the wheelhouse of Microsoft. And I wonder, are they still going to let Bethesda go out there and put on their own show? Because we know that they're allowing them to operate independently. They're not going to be micromanaging them. They're going to be over there at the Vault, the Vault Studio or whatever, the subsidiary, and they'll be doing their own thing. So I wonder if Microsoft is going to tell them, you know what, we need y'all on our stage. We need you to present this on our not platform necessarily, but our E3 stage, as it were, or if they're going to let them go off and do their own thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I would hope, I would love to see it on Microsoft's, on their E3 stage. That would be awesome. But I wouldn't be mad if Bethesda still wanted to put on their own show. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully this is true. I mean, it would be awesome if the game came out this year, but COVID is definitely a real thing. It's holding up a lot of progress on different games. And I know that it might not happen. It's a good chance it's not. I would say it's a better chance of it not coming out this year than it is. But if you can just give us some news, a deep dive into it, I would take that. And if it looks amazing, if it looks good, if it looks like it's going to be a surefire hit, like Microsoft actually might have one under their belt, that's good enough for me. That is good enough. And we'll have to see. Hey, hopefully Jeff Grubb is correct and it comes out this year. And then the bigger question when it comes to Starfield is it Xbox exclusive? What's going to happen with that? It's going to be a great year. I'm going to be positive. It's going to be a great E3. I think this is going to be Microsoft's, man, I'm going to say it, doggone it. I think this is going to be Microsoft's best E3 we have seen in years. I really hope that they toe the mark. They got some ammo, in the clip, and all they got to do is just show it off. Show us some great stuff. Get us excited. And just let the games, as doggone Jim Ryan says, let the games speak for themselves. We'll find out about this later on this year and keep our hand on the pulse. Let's go ahead and move into the next story. Oh, man, speaking of COVID-19. Well, we got some unfortunate news about Gotham Knights this week over on Twitter. Yeah, the official Gotham Knights Twitter account said, and I quote, "We are giving the game more time to deliver the best possible experience for players. Thank you to our amazing fans for your tremendous support of Gotham Knights. We look forward to showcasing more of the game in the coming months." End of quote. So yeah, it looks like Gotham Knights is unfortunately not gonna make it out this year. That's a bit of a bummer because that was one game I was excited to get my hands on, to play it. I love the fact that, I don't know if I love the fact, I'm not gonna go that far. I thought it was an interesting, concept that Batman would not be in the game and it would be other characters that, circle around the character of Batman, Batgirl and all of the other, guys involved, with that set of characters, Robin. Y'all know who I'm talking about, man. But I mean, still, even though it's not releasing this year, it's still positive because at least in the next couple of months, I'm taking it probably around E3 or somewhere closer to it, because we know that these guys are doing their own events and they don't necessarily need E3. But that E3 time frame, that June time frame is still, I think, very, very, just programmed into our minds as gamers. That's the time we look for all of this gaming news to happen. And just the fact, once again, that they said they will be showcasing more of the game off in the next coming months, it does give me at least, some positive vibes that, hey, we'll get something out of the game before the end of the year. No, we won't be playing it, but at least we'll get some more details on it and maybe some more of the mechanics, how the game is looking, possible frame rate, if it has ray tracing. I mean, you guys know all of the bells and whistles. Maybe we'll get some more information on that stuff. The story, as the months come closer to us getting this showcase, showing us more of the game. So we'll see. Now, hold on. Now, this is a more interesting thing to think about. Now, we know that, okay, Gotham Knights, that was supposed to release this year, but the Justice League, Kill the Justice League, that's supposed to come out next year as well, in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully, I don't have that time frame wrong, but I thought that was supposed to be next year's game. How is that going to work? Are they going to release WB Interactive? Are they going to allow 2 Batman games to be released in the same year? Or I might be getting Kill the Justice League mixed up. It might be coming in 2023. Maybe that's the case and I might have jumped the gun, but anyway, it'll be interesting nonetheless. So let's go ahead and move on. I think, man, I harped on that way too long. But so let's move on to the next story. Now, oh my goodness, this was crazy to me. Out of the blue this week, Sony gave us a first look at their, quote, new VR controllers, end of quote, along with some pretty exciting details over on the PlayStation blog post. Now, I mean, they got, man, listen to this, man. This is like my favorite story of the week, because anyway, let me jump into it, man. So the controls have been completely revamped and show no signs of the aging Move controller scheme. Instead, it's an orbed shaped controller that allows for a much more natural grip and a much higher degree of free movement when compared to its predecessor, the Move controller. Now, Sony also said that they have tested the controller for different hand sizes. So if you got a big hand, like myself, you're going to be all right. You're going to be straight. You're going to be just fine. And that's, like I said, that's good, because the last thing you want to do is be uncomfortable. So, while you're playing with the controllers. Now, Sony has also reported that features from the PS5's DualSense controller will also make their way over on the PSVR2 controllers, which will include adaptive triggers and that magical, at least I've heard it's magical, that magical haptic feedback. And in my opinion, the most impressive feature to really give you that sense of immersion to the next level is the controller will offer finger touch detection, which enables the controller to detect where your fingers are placed without any button inputs. That's like some Oculus Rift level stuff that we have never seen with the first PlayStation VR. But anyway, let me finish this up. Now, another awesome feature on the new controller is the tracking system. So instead of having to use a camera to track the controller's movements along with some glowing balls, as it were, y'all guys know it was the Move controllers things. It was the glowing balls on there. The new controllers will use a tracking ring that's located across the bottom of the controller. So you'll have free roam. Now, I don't know how far you're going to be able to go, but just the fact that you no longer need to stay in focus with the camera, you have the tracking system already on the bottom of the controllers. You don't have to feel tethered. Like, how far can I really go? Oh, I got to stay in the frame of the camera. This is fantastic. Now, let me finish this up. Lastly, they even talked about the buttons on the controller. So both the left and right controllers will have analog sticks, which is a huge deal. You no longer have to worry about... Anyway, let me finish, yo, man. I'm so excited about this, man. God, dog. Now, the left controller will also have the triangle and square button. It'll have the L1 button, the L2 button, and the PS5 create button. And on the right side, that controller will have the X button and circle button, as well as the R1, R2, and options button. Okay, wait. Before I go any further, God, dog, how amazing does that sound? I got this from TSA, by the way, but just thinking of the possibilities of this controller, having the adaptive controllers, that dual sense, feel with these controllers in your hands. If you haven't seen the controllers, they really look like, the only thing I can think of is like the Oculus Rift. How those controllers, or the HTC Vive, just think of one of those controllers, or Google it. Google the PlayStation VR controllers. It looks so good, man. Just the fact having the tracking be on the controllers, as well as all of the PlayStation, man, let me calm down, brothers. Good grief, I'm up here stuttering like I'm going to jail. Oh, man, whoo! All right, just the fact that the PSVR2 controllers are gonna have the features of the PS5 controller, that haptic feedback. I've only heard how great it is, but just imagine, for you guys that have already experienced it, imagine how that would feel when you're transported into a VR world, the immersion that it will give you, and also not having to be tethered to a camera. At least that's what it sounds like. I don't want to talk too prematurely, but they said that the new controllers will use a tracking ring that's located across the bottom of the controller. So that says to me that you no longer have to be in focus with a camera, at least in my mind. Hopefully I'm right, which means that you'll have a lot more freedom. You won't have to worry about, like I said, staying in focus. And I know I'm repeating myself here, but just the fact that the controllers also, they're replicating pretty much what you would get with a PlayStation 5 controller. Having two analog sticks to choose from, that means that you're not going to have to do any crazy movements, no pointing and clicking. The fact that you'll also have the controller be able to detect where your fingers are placed without having to use any buttons to do that. That means if you're like sticking your finger, I can't even think of a real good example here, but just use your imagination, man. You're playing the game and you're actually trying to grip something in the virtual world. And the virtual world can, due to the controllers, it can pick up your hand movements, and you can literally feel like you might be chucking a grenade, or you might be holding a gun virtually, and you might can use your index finger to act like you're pulling the trigger. Just the immersion, man. Matter of fact, you wouldn't even have to do that. It got the triggers on the controller. It is, man, I'm telling you, golly. I never opened up my PSVR. Man, I'm in a pool of sweat right now. Hold on, man. I gotta take a drink of water. Hold on a second. God, dog. Man, oh man, these jokers over at PlayStation. I'm telling you, man, just the fact that they're putting this kind of technology into this controller, this is, oh man, in my mind, it's amazing. Like I said, I never opened up the original PlayStation VR. It's still in the box. I think it's a done deal. I think it's a wrap. I think I'm going to just hold on, hold off, and wait for this. It's way less cumbersome. You don't have a ton of wires to have to worry about. You ain't got to hook it up to a external box that hooks into the PlayStation. I'm not going to have to worry about 1,000 different wires. They said one single wire will be required for you to hook up the PSVR2 onto the PlayStation 5. And then talking about all of these other, these amazing sounding features, because you know, we don't know how it's going to be when it releases, but it just sounds so awesome, man. You know, these different features that they're adding to the controllers. I'm just excited, man. I am just so excited to see what happens with this. Man, PSVR 2 is shaping up to be something incredible. Now, is one other thing that I want to talk about with the PlayStation VR 2. We did get the first game. We got the name of the first game to be officially announced for the PSVR 2, which is described as a cyberpunk thriller, and it's entitled Lo-Fi. Now, I'm not familiar with this game, but they say that it's a spiritual successor to Technolust. I don't know what game that is. I think it came out on the Oculus Rift, I believe. So for any of you guys that may be familiar with that, just know that this is a spiritual successor to that game. Now, the game Lo-Fi is also described by Blair Renard, who is part of the team, as a, quote, next generation virtual reality simulation in which you as the player patrol the streets and the skies above them, solving mysteries, fighting crime, or giving into corruption. The choice is yours. End of quote. So if you want to check this out, go over to YouTube, type in Lo-Fi, and yeah, I'm gonna tell you, it looks pretty impressive. I believe that the game was shown maybe a year or two ago, maybe on the Oculus Rift, but what I saw, that trailer, this thing looks very promising. And I mean, the immersion, I mean, of course you can never tell exactly what the immersion is going to be if you're not, you know, actually seeing the game in PSVR itself, or just in VR, as it were. But looking at it, man, this game looks really, really good. I'm so excited about this. Them saying that the game is releasing on PSVR 2, that makes me believe that possibly it could be closer than we think, to releasing, and maybe at this year's around E3 time, the PlayStation will show something off, giving us a better, more immersive look into what we can expect from the PlayStation VR 2. I'm so excited. And it's another thing too, that patent, we went over the patent for these controllers, man, about 7 or 8 months ago. It was quite a while ago where we had read and talked about, they said that the fingers, they were working on some kind of controller to be able to keep track of your fingers individually moving. So it looks like that was real, because they're using it in this controller. Man, I have beat that story to death. We got to go ahead and move on to the next story, man. But good grief, I'm so excited about this. But let's go ahead and move on. Now, and more Xbox news. Former Netflix executive Marcos Waltenberg made the announcement that he is joining Xbox by saying, and I quote, "Can't wait to learn." And by the way, I found this article over on Games Rant. But he said, "I can't wait to learn from the teams behind the iconic Xbox brand, products, services, and games." End of quote. Now, he was at Netflix for 5 years, where he was a director of partner marketing, moving from Asia Pacific, the Asia Pacific region, to Latin America, to the US Canada region. And now he will be the director of Xbox Global Partnerships for Microsoft. So what I found interesting about this is this man worked at Netflix. All right. He was pretty high up, his position, basically, having these, making these partnerships worldwide, pretty much as it were. And what is Xbox Game Pass? It's being coined the Netflix of gaming. So what is this guy going to be working on? He's the director of Xbox Global Partnerships for Microsoft. So I have this guy moving around, making partnerships globally, and possibly getting some more games into Game Pass, maybe day and date. Either way, it's not too much more to say about it because that's pretty much where the article ends. But it does show that Microsoft is trying to get these guys in positions to help them to, looks like, grow the Xbox Game Pass service. And there's no looks like to it. They are. They already got People Can Fly, which I believe Square Enix was the guys that were behind the funding of the game, the publisher on Outriders. They were able to get that done. So yeah, it's just interesting. We'll have to see what happens with this. Like I said, this guy's been all over, making deals with different places, and he's eager to learn. So we'll have to see what happens with this new, not necessarily a partnership, but this new hire that Microsoft has made, and see what this guy will bring to the table when it comes to, this global partnerships position that he's going to have over at Microsoft. Let's go ahead and let's move on to the next story. So this is actually in quick news. I wanted to talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order because according to Gamitsu, the German video game classification system has listed a new PS5 and Xbox version of the game. Now, these new ratings are alongside the last gen ratings, so the rating is still the same, but who knows? Could Respawn actually be working on a current gen version of Jedi Fallen Order, actually taking advantage of the hardware of the PS5 and the Series X, maybe adding some ray tracing into the game, maybe a 60 frames per second, maybe 4K resolution? We shall see. Once again, this is not confirmed, but Gamitsu once again is saying that there is a listing, a new rating, as it were, for a version of the PS5 and Xbox of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. We'll see what happens with that. But let's go ahead and let's move into the next story. Now let's talk about the HBO adaptation of The Last of Us. By the way, I got this from GameSpot. But Neil Druckmann spoke to IGN during the SXSW 2021 and said that the action level will be toned down on the show because it's less necessary when there are no mechanics to teach, which will allow the writers to spend more time focusing on the drama between characters. Now, Neil Druckmann also said, and I quote, and this definitely will give us a bit of an insight to how some of these episodes may be. But he says, quote, "Some of my favorite episodes so far have deviated greatly from the story, and I can't wait for people to see them." End of quote. So it looks like the HBO adaptation, hopefully I said that right. Y'all know my speech is terrible. But it's looking like it's not going to be a one-to-one with the game. It looks like they may have taken a few spins and turns in a couple of ways that the game didn't. And I don't think that's wrong. You're talking about a game that's over 10 years old. Some of the writing, it might be outdated by writers, by the way they view certain material. It just might be outdated, the way that it was presented. And they may want to switch some things up to kind of modernize it. Now, granted, 10 years isn't that long ago. I mean, good grief. But, you know, it might need a bit of a sprucing up, as it were. Now, he also said that, quote, season 1 of the show is going to be the first game, end of quote. So we know that at least none of this stuff is going to bleed over into The Last of Us Part 2. They're going to be concentrating on the first game. He even said that they had talked about the, you know, like the different attire that Ellie and Joel wear. You know, would you see, you know, Joel and, you know, some of the clothes that he had on during the, you know, during the video game, and with Ellie being some of the clothes that she was in. And he said that's kind of up in the air. You know, you might see it, you might not, but they were kind of loose on the appearance of the characters. So that's also something to be on the lookout for. You know, you got a lot of purists out there and they say, oh man, everything should be the same as the game. But I mean, here it is. This thing is going to take place, you know, possibly days are going to be going by in one episode, and it wouldn't be realistic, even though it is in a post-apocalyptic setting. I don't think it would be realistic for them to have the same exact clothes on during the whole season. So, yeah, we'll see how that comes out. And he also said that some of the dialogue from the game would be present in the HBO script. So, yeah, some lines that we might have heard in the game, we will hear on the show. So, I think this is actually very, very interesting. When I saw the trailer for the show, it really got me a little excited. I was a little charged a little bit, like, whoa, looks like they really did some work on this. And with Neil Druckmann in the building being part of this, I'm sure he's going to make sure that they get it, you know, I mean, as right as they possibly can. Now, for me, and this might be a bit of a spoiler, you know, this is referring back to the first Last of Us. Spoiler in 3, 2, 1 if you haven't played the DLC or beat the game. But I would like to see them, you know, talk about Riley and Ellie's relationship a little bit more. Like, how did they meet? How did they become friends? You know, just the lead up to what was going on with them before they went on that final, that last outing that they had with one another. I'm so interested to know, you know, what their relationship was like. I would love for them to kind of dive into that backstory a little bit, because that DLC was so good, man. It was so sad anyway, man. Anyway, Last of Us is just, oh man, that's really, really one of my favorite franchises of all time. And I gotta say, it's really that second one. I mean, the first one is great as it was. That second one, my goodness, it took me over the top. It was phenomenal. Best game I played last generation, and it's definitely become one of my favorite franchises over on PlayStation. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. We'll definitely keep our hand on the pulse with this one, with the HBO adaptation of The Last of Us. But earlier this week during oh man, oh this was anyway. Yeah. Let me get back on track. Earlier this week, during Square Enix's event, shockingly, they revealed Project Athea and showed off some new in-game footage of the game. Now, the game's official name was revealed, and by the way, I got this off of Polygon, but the name of the game is called Forspoken, which has been described as a, quote, narrative-driven adventure, end of quote. Now, the name Athea is actually a region in the game described as, quote, stunningly beautiful, but also cruel and deadly. And the main character, Frey, who was a female character, it looks dope, will learn magical abilities to survive on her journey. Now, Square also said the game has been specifically designed for the PS5, quote, taking advantage of the new console's power and features to create a game that feels like a true next-gen experience. End of quote. And I would like to say, the most shocking thing about this game is, and this came out of nowhere, but it's slated to release in 2022. And I was not expecting that. When we saw Project Athea show up on PlayStation's I guess the E3 stage as it were last year, I said, man, this is a Square Enix game, man. This thing coming out in 2025. And we ain't seeing this for years. But just the sheer fact that, and we know, once again, game delays have been happening left and right. We understand and we get that. But they said it's slated to come out in 2022. That blew me away. And then when I looked at the game and saw what oh man, this thing looks like it's fast paced. It looks beautiful. The main character looks really good. I mean, the world looked vibrant, bright. It looked beautiful. I'm like, wow, it looks good, man. If you haven't seen the game, type in Forspoken into YouTube and look at it. It looks just like that trailer that they showed during the PlayStation event. It looks exactly like that. I mean, like they said, look, we know that these companies, they say a whole lot, to get our money, but it definitely looks like that they are taking advantage, as they said, of the PlayStation 5's power. Game looks great. It looks like something, man, I don't know. I guess the closest thing that I could kind of say it reminds me of, and it was only in glimpses, man. It was like maybe 1 second or 2 second clips of the game, so it's hard to really come up with something to compare it to. But just the movement of it, how fluid it looked, I would say maybe it could be comparable possibly to like a Devil May Cry, kind of similar style to that, maybe kind of like that kind of gameplay style. But it just looked great, man. And it's also being developed, by the way, by Luminous Productions. I think, did they work on Final Fantasy 15? I can't remember. But yeah, just be on the lookout for that. It looks awesome. And definitely, go watch it if you have not seen it. Man, what a shocker. Man, Square Enix, they on their square, man. They are definitely on their square. Anyway, let me go ahead and get to this last story of the week. So, this was something I was absolutely not aware of, but id Software, they are developing a Xbox Series X and PS5 version for Doom Eternal. And when Polygon spoke with id Software's Marty Stratton about what we can expect from this next-gen version, he wasn't, he was a little hesitant. He was a little cagey. He didn't really want to talk about the release date or anything like that. But he did say what they focus on with the id Tech's engine. He said, because he was a little cagey about the information, but he did say this. He said scalability, high frame rates, high resolution, regardless of what platform you're playing on. End of quote. Now, we also said, quote, generally, we give players tons and tons of options. Our video settings menus, our gameplay, and our controller settings. I mean, we really do try to give players as many options and sliders as we can. End of quote. So it looks like that at the end of the day, he didn't really give specifics on what we can expect from the PS5 and Series X version, but him saying this, letting us know that, no matter what platform you're on, you're going to get that scalability, the high frame rates. So it seems like they're going to be, probably putting this at a solid 60. Wait a minute, wasn't the game like 60 frames per second on the PS4 and the Xbox One? I mean, if that's the case, could it mean that they could scale this one up to 120? 120 frames per second? Maybe the resolution. I'm thinking, hey, possibly a 4K bump on the resolution and giving us a lot of different options. What could that mean? Well, we know that early on, maybe a couple of months ago, it's actually been years now that they've been saying that keyboard and mouse support was supposed to be coming to the Xbox platform. That's kind of quieted down. Then maybe a month or two ago, we heard that it was gonna be mouse support again on the Xbox Series X. So maybe, and I highly doubt it, but maybe that could be an option when you're on the Series X, if it's compatible to actually play the game with mouse and keyboard. I wouldn't necessarily do that. I don't think. I'd rather use a controller. But like you said, they try to give players as many options as possible. So we'll see what happens with Doom Eternal. I don't know how many people were really looking forward to this, but I guess I could say the same thing about Jedi Fallen Order. How many people wanted a PS5 and a Series X version of that to take advantage of the hardware? But anyway, that is the end of the gaming news this week, which is going to lead us into the final section of the podcast, which I believe I have a clip here that I want to play for you guys to get into that question of the week. So instead of video game theater, I'm going to play this instead. But stay tuned, guys, because we'll be right back after this.
And then Series S, well, it's no different from like the previous generations where like the system with the lowest specs does end up dictating a few of the things that you're going to do because you're going to have to run on that system, right?
Yeah.
And it's very easy to say that, well, you just like lower your resolution and texture quality and off you go. It's just nowhere near that simple. Like it sounds good when you say it, and every engine is built in a different way. It's another thing when gamers might be, like these idiots, like this game engine like does all of these things. Well, it depends on, are you making like an engine that's much more about, GPU bound or CPU bound? Like which are you taxing a whole lot more? Well, we kind of tax kind of both because we have a lot of physics, but then we have a lot of the ray tracing effects. But then that makes a huge difference, especially on Series S. I don't envy folks making Halo Infinite that has to ship on so many platforms. Like, they have the resources and money, but man, that stuff, like it's super tough to ensure everything works great.
Oh, brothers and sisters, was that some shots? Bang, bang, fired on the Xbox Series S. Here it is. Matter of fact, I gotta shout out IGN. Those guys had a fantastic interview. The guy that gave us this information about the Series S, his name is Thomas Pua, and he works over at Remedy. This gentleman definitely said some things that we all thought were true. But since we're not developers, we 100% couldn't say yay or nay, but we thought that the Series S would be holding back gaming. And here it is, this gentleman said that he would not want to have to work on Halo Infinite because that is way too many different platforms to have that game work on and run on so many different platforms. And he also said that you can have an amazing engine. You could have the best engine. He didn't say the best. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he did say that it's still going to depend on how heavy the GPU is or the CPU is going to be used in that game, and you're only as good as your bottom spec. Here it is. The Series X is now that bottom spec. when it comes to the console. And Microsoft is going to have to make it so these guys can make the game at least run almost the same as the version on the Series X. So the question stems from this, and we're going to go over it officially now. Was the Xbox Series S a mistake? Here it is. It is holding back gaming officially. Doggone, according to Thomas Poor over at Remedy, this is the case. Are you going GPU heavy or CPU heavy? Well, guess what? We can't add that on because we have to make sure that the GPU and CPU of the Series S can handle that. I mean, here it is. Oh man, that I'm sure that can be very, very frustrating. I'm not going to be too long-winded with this one. All I'm going to say is I commend this brother for coming out there and saying what it was, telling the truth, and letting people know that no, it's not that easy just to say downgrade the graphics or the resolution. We gotta work with this doggone system. We gotta work with this console. We can't go so far out of the box where we can't make sure that it'll work on that platform. So the S is holding us back. And next generation, golly, I want to get your thoughts. I want to get your opinions. Was the Xbox Series S a mistake? You can do this two different ways. Either call in to let your voice be heard at 443-216-9934 or email the show because I want you to get your bars off. I want you to get in here and tell me, am I tripping? Is the Series X the best thing ever? I say absolutely not. But I want to hear from you. Email the show. The email address is the Analog Circle Podcast at gmail.com. I was your host, Kiaun Mitchell. Oh, buddy, it was a mistake. It was a big mistake. Microsoft shouldn't have done it, but they wanted to give people a reasonable price point to entry to get into the console next generation, and it is going to bite them in the rear in the end. Anyway, I am out of here. Thank you guys so much for the amazing support. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for being here. And with that being said, before we officially wrap it up, always remember, it is not about the consoles as long as it ain't holding back gaming, but it is about the game. So with that being said, until Wednesday, when we do it again, you guys take care. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.